Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I want to very quickly summarize what's been going on between Daniel Haqiqatjou and Omar Suleiman and Yaqeen Institute. Because Daniel, he wrote a long article, he did a 3-hour live stream. Omar Suleiman, he published an article, and Yasser Qadi even weighed in and he made a pretty lengthy status update on Facebook. But I want to just try to summarize it very clearly because there are a lot of straw man arguments, there are a lot of red herrings, and I know that a lot of people, they're probably not going to sift through Daniel Haqiqatjou's entire article, and they're probably not going to watch his 3-hour live stream all the way through, so I want to summarize it very quickly, okay? This is what's going on. Number one, we can all agree, Daniel Haqiqatjou, Omar Suleiman, Yasser Qadi, myself, everyone at Yaqeen Institute, inshallah, we can all agree LGBT is against Islam. Homosexuality, promoting it, practicing it, engaging in it, it's haram. The idea of being transgender, a man trying to imitate a woman, trying to become a woman, and vice versa, these are things that are clearly haram in Islam. We can all agree on that, right? So here comes the question, here comes the issue. Why is it that Daniel Haqiqatjou, for example, he can be very clear in expressing this, in saying these things are clearly against the Quran and Sunnah, clearly against Islam. These are things that we should not promote, we should not engage in. These are things that we should actually see as sinful, because if we don't, then there is a problem. Also, we should beware of promoting individuals who try to actively legitimize this behavior and try to pass legislation that is going to legitimize and encourage this sort of behavior, because it's going to affect the Muslims negatively now and in the future. Why is it that Daniel Haqiqatjou can say this, but other people won't say this? We have to ask this question. For 1400 years, did Muslims have a problem condemning homosexuality? Was there any doubt? Was there any sort of scholarly difference of opinion regarding homosexuality, regarding being transgender and choosing what gender you want to be? If somebody is unwilling to clearly point out that they are against such behavior, it's clearly against Islam, that people who promote and try to legitimize this sort of behavior are doing a disservice to Muslims, you have to ask yourself why. Why is it that year after year, more and more Muslims are adopting the LGBT agenda? We find Muslim activists and politicians celebrating the LGBT community, going to their parades, dancing in the streets, spreading this sort of ideology throughout the Muslim community, even though LGBT is haram. Well, one of the ways this has happened is that some of the big Muslim clerics, the people who the Muslim communities look to for guidance, for knowledge, have supported individuals promoting this behavior. It's not just a slip of the tongue. It's not just an out of context quote. It is years of consistent behavior. So when Muslims see this happening, if somebody's very concerned and sincere, they're going to say, hey, wait a second, where is this heading? What is going to happen to the Muslims if this continues to go further? If more and more Muslims adopt these ideologies? If legislation is passed that's going to spread to the Islamic schools promoting the LGBT agenda? We need to make sure we put a stop to this. And one of the best ways to put a stop to it is for the big Muslim clerics, the famous imams and Muslims, to express what Islam truly says about these things and let the Muslims know. But certain Muslims will not do it. Why not? Well, in America, in general, you can't speak against the LGBT unless you want to be character assassinated by them. One thing that the liberal community does is they character assassinate people based on them saying things that they consider to be politically incorrect. They try to dig up old photos, old tweets, old podcasts, and use it to get people fired, to get people boycotted and condemned. So it makes sense if there is a Muslim who is aligned with the left, who is in deep with the liberals, they're not going to be able to publicly say, hey, I fundamentally am against homosexuality. It is clearly against my religion. They're not going to be able to say, I fundamentally disagree with the idea of being transgender. of spreading this ideology of choosing whatever gender you want, of a man trying to imitate a woman and vice versa. This is against my beliefs as a Muslim. I don't support legislation being passed because it's going to affect the Muslims. It's going to affect the values of the Muslim children, the Islamic schools, the masajid. They can't say this because the liberal community will excommunicate them. So the only possible excuse I can even think of for somebody to try to justify this behavior is to say, you know what, I know LGBT, it's haram, it's against Islam, but what we have to do based on our situation is weigh the pros and cons, and the pros outweigh the cons. I need to just be silent and I need to just play ball, because if I don't, the Muslims are going to suffer worse. And that has to be the discussion that people have. We need to have an open and honest conversation. Is that true? Because that's the best case scenario that somebody can say who is involved in this sort of behavior, is they feel like the pros outweigh the cons. So let's really look into that, because it seems like a very bogus and weak argument. In fact, I think that the complete opposite is true. And that is what Daniel Haqiqatju is trying to bring attention to. If you are trying to claim that Muslims and the LGBT community, we have certain mutual interests, what are those mutual interests? Let's talk about it. How are the Muslims going to benefit by the LGBT community having certain laws passed in their favor? Is that going to benefit the Islamic schools, the masajid, the Muslim-owned businesses? What about certain speech laws? Are Muslims going to be able to even voice how we really feel about LGBT? Are Muslims going to benefit from that? And that's all Daniel's asking. What sort of ways are Muslims going to benefit by us actively marching alongside these people? By us advocating for them and their rights? Let's have that discussion. Let's put away all the straw man arguments, all the red herrings, all the name calling, and let's discuss this. And on the flip side, what are the dangers and the harms that can come from all of this behavior? If you start legitimizing behavior that Islam is clearly and explicitly against, how is that going to affect the iman of the Muslims? If young Muslims grow up in a world where they are taught from birth being a homosexual, practicing homosexuality is completely okay, it's completely fine. In fact, it's a good thing. We should support it. If they are taught that being transgender, being born a biological male, and choosing to be a female, if that's a choice, it's completely fine, it's completely okay, then what is going to happen when they start finding out what Islam says about it? What Allah and His Messenger say about it? Not to mention, will we even be able to say what Islam says about it? Or will we have to teach these things in Islamic school? Will we have to have these sorts of values promoted in the masjid? One of two things are going to happen. Either people are going to change the deen, they're going to change the religion, they're going to start making the haram halal, or people are going to apostate. They're going to leave the religion. They're going to say, how can Islam be against such things? This can't be true. And they're going to leave the religion. Now, if you disagree with that, then that's a conversation to be had, but that is the issue. That's the discussion. Any other sort of discussions going on, they're red herrings, they're straw men, people are getting emotional, they're calling people names and slapping them with labels. The issue to talk about is, number one, we all agree that LGBT is haram, so why can't we openly say that? Why can't certain people openly say that strongly with conviction? And number two, if they think that we need to work alongside these people and march alongside them and advocate for them, what's the benefit? Let's weigh the pros and cons. Let's do that. Let's have that conversation. Allah knows best. Jazakumullahu khairan wa salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.